welcome to Becoming the Community CEO. I'm your host, Roberto Candelaria. And over the past several years, I've partnered with leaders around the world to build highly engaged and profitable communities. Through this journey, I also discovered the characteristics that these communities had in common, and today, I'm here to share them with you. Together, we'll explore conversations around community building, partnerships, leadership, and profits. These are the core areas to becoming the community CEO. And now, let's jump into this week's episode. Well, welcome, Justin. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. So excited to have this conversation. So excited for you to have this podcast. And look, we're going to start this conversation. It's going to go in a crazy direction, I'm sure, but I'm open to it and I'm excited about it.
Yeah, definitely open to it. And thank you for pushing me on the podcast. And I think it's important to say that because, like, for those of you listening, one of the things is like, we are all on this lovely journey called life together. And I think what people forget is like, depending on the relationships that they have, if they are in one place or another within a relationship, that they try to keep whatever standing or whatever ego within a relationship, and that people don't realize that we are all on this lovely journey called life together, which means that we can learn together and grow together and move forward together, and that no one of us has to have every single answer for everything. And so today, ladies and gentlemen, we're having an interesting conversation. And as Justin said, interesting because we really don't know where this is going to go today. And so Justin has this event series coming up. And I was fascinated when he told me about it. It's called The 4 Pillars. And so I guess let's start with that. What are the 4 pillars that you have seen in the business owners, the business leaders you've interviewed and worked with? What are kind of the 4 key areas that they've been working with in their life? And then the one that you find that when they start to work on this one area, that's when everything else can start to open and fall into place.
Yeah. That's a great question. Obviously, the 4 pillars came from, 400 plus conversations at this point with some of the greatest minds and thought leaders in the world with my podcast. And I was really, obviously the podcast being called The Growth Not Movement, I always used to say it's about growth in all areas of your life. Through COVID, as the world slowed down and I was able to finally stop and breathe, I realized that it's really about these 4 pillars of your life, which is business, relationships, wellness, and spirituality. And it's really about focusing on consistent growth in all 4 of those areas. And I love the fact that you asked me, what's the big shift? What do we realize? And I found out really by studying and going deep in these 4 pillars is that they're all intertwined and connected, but spirituality, when you dive into it, really unlocks so much of people's lives. It can unlock success. It can unlock great relationships. It can unlock, a complete new direction in your life. And so spirituality, I would say, is that pillar that really turns the switch up for so many people when you're able to dive in. And not to go off on a tangent, but I tend to do this at times. I realize that spirituality means something different to every single person, whether that means your religion, whether that means, or your faith, I should say, whether that means something different, it doesn't matter. To me, what spirituality is, the first thing is the realization that something is more powerful than us. And the second thing is understanding that there's an energy flowing around us, and we have to do the work in order to make sure the energy is flowing with us instead of against us.
Awesome. Love it. And so when you talk about what spirituality is to you, I love that definition. One of the things that I tell people is like, I work with people who don't believe that they're the biggest thing on this earth. Like if you don't believe that there's anything higher than you, whether that be God, Buddha, Allah, universe, energy, source, whatever it may be to you, then like, I really can't help you if you think that like you're the number one thing of all totality and like all the universe was created for like for you to be the highest being in it. So as you started on this journey of spirituality and figuring out what it is for you, what are some of the steps that took for you to be able to open up more, and where do you find that leaders can start for themselves?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the journey really started as a kid. I mean, my grandfather was a pastor, so we'd go to church every single Sunday. We were there and showing up, and so it began as a very typical faith, religion-based thought process. to understand. And I still consider myself a Christian, but around the age of 16, I started to question the walls in which I went to every single week. And I was like, what's the point of this really? And I started to really dive in, and I made it my own journey of like, what does this message mean to me when it came to space, when it came to faith and all the things that I questioned, right? And then a number of years ago, probably 4 years ago at this point, I read a book called What is the Bible, which was written by Rob Bell. And it's really and the subtitle of that is something like 5,000 stories written by 50 people over the course of 5,000 years, or 50,000 stories or something like that. And it really made me go, wow, what I've been thinking is true. And then I also realized that spirituality is so much more than just God. It's so much more than just that understanding. And so my journey really began with the idea of meditation, right? Like, I was like, I don't get it. I was the guy who go, I can't meditate. I'm too hyper. I can't do these things. And there's still moments in my life where I'm like, today is not the day I can meditate. And those are usually the days you have to. But the journey of spirituality began in the idea of, I have control over my emotions at any given time. And I can settle myself down and calm myself down or amp myself up, all by doing certain practices. And I've learned that through coaches and teachers and all the other things, is that I have control over the things around me and the emotions around me. And so about 4 years ago, I hired a relationship and spirituality coach. She did both. And she was the one who started to unlock me into the idea of like, what's happening around you all the time, right? And so one night I was scrolling through Facebook, as we always do, and I found this article talking about empaths. And I just happened to click on the article and I read it, and I was like, holy crap, this is me. This whole entire article is saying who I am. And I texted my coach and I said, I read this article. I think this is me. And she goes, what's it feel like to finally realize why you are the way that you are? And that's when I realized that we all have energy. We can send it, we can receive it. And that was really the beginning journey of spirituality and what it meant to me. And so I think for me, to answer the second part of your question of like, where can a leader begin? I would just say meditate. Start meditating and open yourself up to the idea that funky crystals in your life can actually help you, right? But start in the meditating, and then you can kind of go from there.
I'm laughing at the crystal piece and the ADD brain. So several years ago, I had the opportunity to work with an energy worker by the name of Suzanne Jarvis. She's in Houston, and it was the first time that I'd ever had any type of energy work done. And she's got this amazing studio and the music, and like you just walk in there and it just feels like home. And so she tries to explain to me what she's going to do, and that she's going to take me through this guided meditation. And then she starts like, now Justin can see this, y'all, but y'all can't. She like puts her hands in front of her and starts like waving them back and forth, like I don't know if y'all remember like when you were a kid and like used to put like yarn between your fingers and like tried to have people do it. Like, so she was doing this type of thing. And I'm like looking at her and like, all I wanted to do was laugh. I'm just like, I don't know what she is doing right now, but that can't be doing anything. Like, I'm just going to sit here and I'm just going to close my eyes, because she looks like she's waiting for a cat to come play with the yarn between her fingers. And I just closed my eyes, and like the next thing you know, I say I woke up, but I like opened my eyes, and I guess in a way I did wake up, which is a whole nother conversation for another day. And I just felt so light, and I felt so free. And I was like, what did you do? And she's like, no, what did we do? And it was my first experience in working with guided meditation, working with an energy healer. And since then, I mean, she's been to the operating room with me, as weird as that sounds. She's been to the hospital with me. And it's just like, so when you say meditation, one of the things that I'd never dived into for me personally is I have the ability to overanalyze things. I don't know if you know anybody like that. And so one day she's like, well, do you want to know? And I was like, no, I don't want to know how it works, because if I know how it works, I will find a way to mess it up. And so for people that might be listening, being like, okay, they're now talking about meditation and crystals. What is a way for them to get started? Not everybody has to go to a healer immediately. What are ways that people can get started with that journey of meditation to really awaken themselves?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I'm glad we're talking about this point of it, because we can go super deep. Like we could talk about Reiki healings and, crystals and energy work. And like you just mentioned, like, but the thing is that scares a lot of people away. If they're not into the spiritual thing or they don't believe in any of the things we're talking about, it's really hard to say, okay, just go dive in. But I think curiosity is such a great tool that leaders miss, right? I'm super curious, as you are, to what does that mean? Like, why not get that leg up? And I think what I'll say to most people is this: the highest achievers in the world, on many planes, the Ed Miletts, the Matthew McConaughey's, the whatever, they've all been doing this for a very, very long time. So let's start there. Understand that your mentors, the people you look up to, they're already doing this. They might not talk about it, but they're already doing it. So let's start there. The second thing is start doing guided meditation, even by yourself. There's an app called Insight Timer, which I highly recommend. That also uses some sound frequency, but you don't need to know that's happening. But some guided meditation really can get the ball rolling for you. Because at first I thought meditation was, you laughed at the ADD brain. I thought meditation was sit in silence, don't think about anything, worry about your breathing for 47 hours at a time, and all of a sudden you'll find peace. But the reality is I still, to this day, can only meditate with guided meditation, because the silence is not the thing for me. And so I plug in Insight Timer and I'll focus on different things. But I would say start with guided meditation, because it keeps you on the track of like, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be. And it's funny, once my brain starts to wander, that voice pops right back in. They know exactly the timing of all of it. And I think that's a beautiful place to start, but then get curious. Start asking questions. Why is it the fact that I sat here with some sound waves going into my brain, that all of a sudden I'm more peaceful? All of a sudden I'm more productive. All of a sudden, all these other things are happening in my life. Be curious, start to ask questions, and start to connect with people that may be a little bit further along in that journey.
Let's talk about those two words, be curious. So I have said for, I don't know how long, that one of my biggest superpowers in business is that I'm just more curious than other people. And like, okay, I know someone also just thought, but curiosity killed the cat. Believe me, Justin and I are still here, at least if that's the time of this recording. By the time you hear it, well, we'll see. But like, how do you bring curiosity into, I'm not even going to say your business. How do you bring curiosity into your life, and I'm even going to say your relationship? Because like, one of the things that I see with leaders is that somewhere someone told us, and I'm saying us because we've all had it at different parts in our life, this is the one way to do something. And like, one of my biggest pet peeves as both a student and also a mentor, both ends, is when someone says, this is the one way. I believe that there's more than one way. So how do people start with that curiosity in their life, in their relationships, and then expand that curiosity into their business? Because I don't think that curiosity in your business starts in your business or starts in your community. It's got to start somewhere else first.
Yeah. I mean, I say all the time that when I was a student in high school, part of my story is at a 1.7 GPA when I was in high school. And it was because I wasn't curious enough. I was afraid to raise my hand and ask questions. And it led me down to zero path, right? Like I barely graduated high school. I definitely didn't go to college. And so the biggest shift in my life was when I decided to become the most interested person in the room, which means the people that I surround myself with, I started to ask a ton of questions.
Wait.
Yeah.
We need to go back to that real quick. I want y'all to hear that. Be the most interested person in the room, not the most interesting. I think that's a key distinction that I wanted to make sure that people heard.
Yeah, I mean, it's super important. I think I put a post on Instagram at some point where it was like I went from the least interesting person in the room to the most interested person in the room. And what that did for me, I mean, my network has grown exponentially, as you know, because I started to ask the right questions. And I think that's the difference, right? The curiosity killed the cat was you going down rabbit holes endlessly to figure something out instead of being very direct and poignant in any of the questions that you ask, right? Like I obviously saw what you built and saw what you did. And I was like, this is the person I'm going to ask questions to. And you and I spent a night at a kitchen counter in Florida, mapping out all these things. I go, this is the rabbit hole I need to go down. So I think the thing is find the master, follow the model. Those are the people that you ask the questions to, not not Harry, your next door neighbor. Don't ask him the questions. Find the right person and get curious and start asking those questions, right? Like I'm curious now and I'm going really deep in the spiritual journey. So I have mentors and people in my life who are much further along, who are tapped in, and they're the people that are helping me, right? I've done well. I've done decent in business. You're the person I hired to say, hey, take me to the next level. And so when I say curiosity, it has to be a directed curiosity, right? And in a relationship, like, guess what? After a long time of being together, you just think you're going through the motions, right? But you're two human beings that are constantly growing. So ask your partner questions. What are you up to now? Like, what are you working on? What lights your fire today, right? And I guarantee you, when you're able to do that, you're going to become closer in your relationship. So curiosity is the key to great successes, great relationships, great everything. But you can't go down weird rabbit holes, and don't be super scatterbrained about it. Be really, really strategic about the curiosity.
I feel like there's a book in there somewhere, Strategic Curiosity.
There you go. So I don't know if that's my book, but somebody should definitely take it.
Yeah, it's definitely not mine. Dr. John Dispenza talks about deliberate creation. So let's, do deliberate curiosity. Let's somebody call Dr. Dispenza and let him know that Justin and I came up with his next book. So we're going to get a text. Watch.
Yeah, right.
So if we go with that, right? 4 pillars. Spiritual awakening. Spiritual awakening starts with realizing that there's something bigger than us. If there's something bigger than us, the way that we can start to bring that together is by realizing that we have control over our emotions at any given time. And that as we have that control, to begin to be really curious, to dig in and to dive. And as we start that journey, that's where I think is what you're saying, that we can go into the other 3 areas, these other 3 pillars. And so tell us more about these 4 pillars, how they've shown up for you, and what's next for you.
Yeah. So great question. And one thing that you said that I thought was really good was about, allowing yourself, you control your emotions. You had just mentioned that, right? And so the greatest advice anybody ever gave me, I was angry one day and I was talking to my coach and she's like, how are you feeling right now? And I was like, I'm angry. Like, I'm pissed. And she's like, cool, you're allowed to be. And it was the first time somebody ever gave me permission to be something other than happy. And so anybody listening right now, I give you permission to feel your feelings, and it's okay, right? Like without sadness, there would be no happiness. And so if you can embrace any of those emotions, that's how you really control them. It's not about shifting or any of that stuff, right? And so when I look at these 4 pillars and the design of them, I realize that these are pillars for a reason, because they're not the end all be all. It's just finding satisfaction in all 4 of them that creates fulfillment in your life. And if you can find that balance, that's where success comes from. And what I say is these 4 pillars, on top of that, there's this glass plate, right? And so on that glass plate is everything you hold dear. Your loved ones, your children, your pets, whatever it is, they're on that glass plate. The issue with most people, most high performers, is they can get really head down in one of the 4 pillars at a time. And that pillar begins to grow, right? So head down in my business for 10 years, that pillar begins to grow. And I've left the other 3 behind. What happens is that glass plate tips and it'll shatter and you will lose everything you hold dear. And the reason I find these 4 pillars to be the most important is because once you find that balance, that plate stays on top. All of a sudden you go, I don't need anything else in my life. I'm fulfilled right now in this moment. Yes, it's important to have goals, but your goals aren't going to give you the happiness you think it's going to give you. It's finding that fulfillment in these 4 pillars and finding that balance. So you have everything you need, which is your loved ones, which is enough to pay the bills, which is the spirituality that finds you at peace. It is the wellness that makes sure that you're here for a long time to live out and enjoy these things. And so that's why those 4 pillars to me have become so important. But the important part isn't necessarily understanding the pillars. It's understanding that we have to pour into all 4 of them all the time.
And that is so key. Several years ago, and I say several years ago, it's 2015, 2016, I made a conscious shift in my business from where I was doing everything and had literally become everything to everyone except me. Mm. And there was this shift. And y'all, when I say shift, it was more like you hit the curve going 90 miles an hour and you're just like, well, do I go straight or do I turn? And it was a turn that ended up being like a U-turn going 90 miles an hour. It was not comfortable. And what ended up happening is I actually spent probably the next 18 months. So when you were talking about that plate, I could visualize that from personal experience where wealth became health, meaning I was so focused on building the monetary side, the financial stability side, that everything else around me suffered. And that was a real situation. And so to then, get that stabilized and be like, okay, now let's bring everything else back up. When we can do that, I believe with intentionality and focus on those four areas versus, okay, today I'm going to focus on wealth. Next week, I'll focus on relationships. Next week, I'll focus on my spirituality. And then it's just like, well, what's the maintenance between them? And the other visual I got is, so growing up in the church also, there was this one skits that people did, and I'm going to mess it up, y'all. But it was like a hunky-dory, peachy keeney, okie dokie, nitty gritty lifestyle. And what it was is, yes, y'all should have seen Justin's face with that. But here's the thing, right? What it was is they said, picture somebody holding these dowel rods, and that each one of those things was someone or something in his life. So hunky dory, peachy keeney, okie dokie, nitty gritty lifestyle, each dowel rod had a spinning plate on it. And that in order to keep one going, which one was going to fall when he had all these different things. And so I love the example that you gave. Instead of like, you got a bunch of spinning plates all over the place, you have one plate. You have everything that's dear to you, and you have these four areas that hold that up. And what are you doing to make sure that something isn't tipping off? I think is something that for me personally, I can see better because like if y'all, whether it be business or fitness or whatever, people say focus on your core. And that's actually what I like about that visualization.
Yeah.
Is it's just like you focus on the core, the four. That's what keeps this standing up. And so I think that that's awesome there. So
no,
Justin.
It's true. And really, really quick, just to add something to that.
Yeah.
It's very, very true. And when I think about these four pillars in the glass plate, I was like, well, what's the base of this whole thing? Like, what is the thing on the bottom? And I realized it's yourself. Right. And so I ask a question to every single person that's been on my show. It's a two-part question. One is, what's your definition of success? The second part is, what are three things you do every single day to ensure that success for yourself? This was the tipping or the shift in my life when it came to finding success. Was I realized those three things, it was serving themselves. And as leaders and givers and doers for others, we tend to exhaust ourselves. And I have a mission to impact millions of lives and let people understand that it doesn't matter where you come from. What matters are the choices you make today to create a better tomorrow for yourself. And so I was trying to do this and pour from a cup that was empty. And the shift in my life was making sure I instilled things every single day to make sure my cup is full so I can have abundance and give to others. And so I do four things every single day to ensure that. Now, by chance, I realized those four things poured into each pillar. And I was like, this is crazy. And this is where this whole idea came from, right? So one thing is I walk every single morning. So I walk 3 miles every single morning. Obviously, that's a wellness pillar, right? I move my body, but I do that with my girlfriend. So that pours into the relationship pillar. That's our time to reconnect, to be together, to do all those things. The second thing is I visualize. So this is the spiritual side. I visualize and see where I'm going in life. So it gives me the motivation and the peace at times. So my visualization is more of a meditation type of practice. Number 3, I learn something new every single day. So this is usually towards business. So I learn something new every single day because I was, again, the least interested person and I needed to become interested. So I make sure I learn something. And then the fourth thing is I reach out to somebody I care about every single day. And that, again, is the relationship pillar. So I pour into my relationships because I know in turn that pours back into me. So I just wanted to share that because that's really the basis. If we're not taking care of ourselves, we're not going to find success in any of these pillars.
See, y'all. And what's funny is that what I was about to say, Justin and I are on a wavelength today, y'all. As I was about to say,
Tony Robbins you.
Exactly. I was going to ask you, how does that show up in your everyday life? And like, see, you just knew. And y'all, some of y'all aren't going to know what that means. And that's okay, what he just said. But, that's a whole nother conversation for a whole other day there. So, Justin, what's next? What's next for you? What's next for the business? And where are you taking high performers?
Yeah, thank you for giving me this opportunity. I mean, obviously the mission has always been to impact so many lives as much as I possibly can. And I know I can't do it alone. And so what's next is, again, another retreat focusing on those 4 pillars that's coming up in October. And then obviously the live event, which you'll be there, which I'm really excited to have you there, which is May of 2022. You actually haven't even been announced yet. I just announced it, guys. Like it just came out on this podcast that Roberto is going to be there as well. And we're excited about that and having him be a part of it. But really for me, it's really about helping high performers find fulfillment in their life. I ask the question a lot of times to people who were you before the world told you who you should be? Which I think is such a powerful question because we get lost in this human experience. And we're told by guys like Tony Robbins and Grant Cardone and Gary Vee, which by the way, I love and admire them. They're great people, but we're told by them that we need the external rewards, right? We need the millions of dollars. We need the car. We need the house. We need the girl or guy. Like we need the perfect thing. And the reality is you're going to get there. And I want you to get there. I want you to hit every single goal you have. But the realization of if you have a goal of making $1 million, once you get there, you're not going to be happy. You're immediately going to go, how do I make 10 million? And so I want to help high performers and individuals find a way to find fulfillment in their life right now while chasing after their dreams, while doing all these things, because we get lost in the shuffle of trying to get one thing at the end, and you're going to get there and you're going to go, oh, now what? But why not enjoy the journey? And so that's really what I'm passionate about. I'm really helping people unlock that thing that they're missing in their life to go, oh, wait, I am happy. I am fulfilled. I am these things. And so that's really my major focus going forward, working with people one-on-one and really helping them get there.
Awesome. So where do people connect with you, find out more about you and stalk you? Because they're going to do that.
The easiest way is wherever they're listening to this podcast, they can go search for the Growth Now movement. If they like what they hear there, I would love it if they click subscribe and come on the journey with me. And then my favorite place to hang out is Instagram. So my username is @JustinT.Schenck. Figure out how to spell it by the show notes because you're not going to figure it out by hearing it. But Justin T. Schenck is where you can find me on Instagram.
But then the last question, and we'll say that Justin gets a new question because, he's not like everybody else, is what's happiness to you?
Happiness to me is doing what I love every single day and being surrounded by the people that I love every single day. And it's not about an outcome. It's about doing what I love and enjoying the journey.
Well, there y'all have it, y'all. Thanks for listening to this show. I hope that you find a way to do what you love today and hang out with the people that you love. And we'll chat with y'all soon. Bye-bye. Well, howdy, and thanks for listening to another episode of the show. Hey, if you'd love to stay in contact with us, visit robertoteaches.com to connect with me on social media, learn about our Facebook groups and other places that we can connect to help you on your journey to becoming the community CEO. And if you're loving the show, do me a favor. I'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give us a review on iTunes or your favorite podcast listening platform.